What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and I trust that you are spent. It is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. It is officially past 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, the best time zone, if I'm being perfectly honest with you all, which means the NFL's trade deadline has come and gone this year. Any other trade or anything along those lines will not be happening until the season is over and we get those unofficial ones around the NFL Combine that become official in the new league year and all that stuff. But for now, the trade deadline officially over, and there is a lot to get to relative to the Dallas Cowboys. There's a lot to still get to relative to Monday night's loss to the Arizona Cardinals, which feels like 100 years ago at this point in time because Tuesday has been such a massive day. But obviously the subject at hand, as the Cowboys are on their bye week, is the two new players on their team, the one player who's no longer on their team, the draft compensation that has gone away and back and forth and all sorts of stuff. And we're going to break it all down right now here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, where you are hopefully subscribed. I have daily Dallas Cowboys videos, live shows, discussion, post-game shows, all sorts of fun stuff. I enjoy talking Cowboys with each and every single one of you. And if you are subscribed here and you like what I'm doing, you can hang out with me on social media. I'm on X, Instagram, and Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, rj.ochoa. You can also like my Facebook page, follow me on LinkedIn, email me, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com, or leave a comment down below, and I'll do my very best to get to those. We are live. What's going on? Lynn Wu Doyle says, I love the additions. The Dallas Cowboys, let's just kind of set the stage, okay? So Tuesday morning before 7 a.m., speaking of Central Standard Time, before 7 a.m. Central, the Cowboys had made a trade. They sent their 2026 7th-round draft pick, shout out Monica Geller always, to the Cincinnati Bengals in exchange for linebacker Logan Wilson. All day long, I've been wanting to call him Luke Wilson. I don't know why. For a long time, I kept calling Kenny Clark Kenny Rogers. It's just, we all have those things, but whatever. Logan Wilson, I almost did it again. Logan Wilson is now a member of the Cowboys, the newest Dallas Cowboys linebacker, obviously. And for a 7th-round pick, this was really a fantastic trade. This was a very inconsequential selection the Cowboys sent to Cincinnati, acquired a player with 2 years of team control left, a player who's immediately the best linebacker on their team. We obviously all understand and acknowledge that DeMarvion Overshown is in his own unique box relative to that conversation. It just kind of felt very frustrating from the perspective of the Cowboys losing on Monday night, and it felt very empty. And I think that we all, and this applies to the second trade that we're going to get to in a moment here, can understand that these things might be too little too late relative to the 2025 season. And I understand that there are mathematical probabilities that suggest the Cowboys still have life and they could be a wild card and blah, 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 blah. We all get it. We all understand. But these moves, the two moves that the Cowboys made on Tuesday, signify a commitment, and dare I even say a serious commitment for the future, for life beyond the 2025 season. And the most significant of those is obviously the acquisition of Quinnen Williams. The Cowboys did it. The Cowboys swung big and landed. And it's important to understand, because we're going to mention Micah Parsons and the totality of what the Cowboys have done from an overall trade perspective since dealing Micah to Green Bay. It's important to understand that Jerry Jones reportedly called the New York Jets about Quinnen Williams before he dealt Micah to the Green Bay Packers. It was apparent that the Cowboys wanted Quinnen Williams then. They coveted him, et cetera, et cetera. This was something I talked about with Jake Asman in the lead up to the Cowboys-Jets game here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. That deal was obviously not consummated, but it was consummated on Tuesday. The Cowboys sent to the New York Jets in exchange for Quinnen Williams, Mozzie Smith, best of Mozzie, thanks for the good times, their 2nd-round draft pick in 2026, and a 1st-round draft pick in 2027. That A distinction is necessary because, as you know, the Cowboys currently, at least prior to the Quinnen Williams deal, held 2 1st-round draft picks in the 2027 NFL draft, their own original pick, and that from the Green Bay Packers by way of the Micah Parsons trade. The New York Jets will receive the better of those 2 picks, whichever one is closer to the top of the order. So obviously between the Cowboys and Packers, whoever has a worse season next year in 2026. We can take a look at the totality of everything. Let's look here, and I promise this is really kind of worth understanding with regards to everything the Cowboys have done since the week before this season began. So I've got this article up available for you all, bloggingtheboys.com. Here is the totality of everything the Cowboys have done from a trade standpoint since the Micah Parsons deal. They have received Quinnen Williams from the New York Jets, Kenny Clark from the Green Bay Packers, Logan Wilson from the Cincinnati Bengals, and Green Bay's first-round draft pick in the 2026 NFL draft. The Cowboys do have multiple selections in the 2026 NFL draft, even after all of Tuesday's action. The Cowboys gave up. The Cowboys sent away, obviously, Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers, Mozzie Smith to the New York Jets in the Quinnen Williams trade, their second-round draft pick in 2026 to the Jets in the Quinnen Williams trade, their seventh-round draft pick in 2026 to the Bengals. That was obviously the Logan Wilson deal, and the better of their two first-round draft picks in 2027. The Cowboys will hold a first-round draft pick in the 2027 NFL draft. It just remains to be seen whether it will be their own original pick, which is obviously what we're rooting for. We hope they have the more successful season relative to the Packers. It will either be that pick or Green Bay's that ultimately winds up in the hands of the New York Jets in the aftermath of the Quinnen Williams trade. Again, it's a lot to kind of process, and I don't think that you should look at it one way or another and say, oh, it was totally worth it. Oh, it's still a failure. This is simply the math and the aggregate result of what everything is that the Cowboys have done since initially sending Micah Parsons to the Packers after initially inquiring about Quinnen Williams with the New York Jets for that specific deal. Now, I mean, again, I don't think that it justifies anything. I don't think that anything was some grand master plan. I don't think that the Cowboys got one or lost one or whatever, but it is interesting to look at relative to the overall package. CC Black on YouTube, thank you for the super chat, says packaging both first for Arvell Reese. That would certainly be very interesting. Jonathan says, was holding out hope for a safety as well. I agree with you, but it's hard to feel like we lost today, if I'm being totally honest with you, although I have some thoughts on that. Drums says the return of Overshown, the addition of Williams, talking about Quinnen, obviously, Javonte Williams playing very well. It's amazing how the Cowboys have all these Tylers and TSs and now Williamses, but talking about Quinnen Williams should bolster the defense. The wild card is not impossible now. I agree with that, ultimately. Jonathan says Jerry Jones wanted Quinnen Williams the whole time. The Jets just weren't willing to deal him for Micah. I think if you're a Jets fan, you probably wish they had, although maybe if you're a Jets fan, you feel differently relative to your own totality because of the Sauce Gardner deal with the Indianapolis Colts, et cetera, et cetera. Lin Wu D. Doyle says, what about Osa going to end on certain downs? It's going to be very interesting. The Cowboys do have the good fortune of being on bye this week, and that they have an opportunity to kind of figure out how Quinnen Williams is going to work. The Cowboys obviously just paid Osa Digizua, so he isn't going anywhere. Kenny Clark might be the odd man out. It was reported by ESPN in the immediate aftermath of the Micah Parsons trade that part of what Dallas liked about Kenny Clark's deal is that they had a level of escapability after the 2025 season. That made highlighting him as a necessary part of the trade very, very silly, in my personal opinion, but it remains true nonetheless. And the Cowboys could say goodbye to Kenny Clark if they want to, and therefore have Quinnen Williams and Osa Digizua along the interior. They could also figure things out with Solomon Thomas. They have options, but at the very least, at the end of it all, the Cowboys have Quinnen Williams, so everything else is ultimately going to be okay. Ryan says, please draft the entire Ohio State defense and we're good. Johnny Boyaren says, I wonder if Fitzpatrick was considered at all. It's hard to know, honestly. I'm looking to see if anything's popping up on Twitter. Obviously, we're past the deadline, so it's not like anything could happen right now. But I think that this gets to the subject of being greedy. The Logan Wilson trade is obviously cool, and the price paid was very low, and so it is a huge net win for the Cowboys. He's a very good player who's going to help them. This was true even when we were very mad on Tuesday morning when word first broke about it. The Quinnen Williams deal is amazing, that the Cowboys were able to hold on to both of their first-round draft picks in 2026, especially because it looks like their first-round draft pick in 2026 is going to be, closer to the top of the order. Obviously, we'll see how that all goes. But again, look, ultimately, the fact that Dallas was able to land Quinnen Williams is kind of the headliner story, with all due respect to Logan Wilson. And does it make them a playoff team? Does it make them a more competitive team? At the very least, certainly in 2025. Yeah, they're a better football team because of the fact that they now have these two players. But while Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams make the Cowboys a better football team, a better defense specifically in 2025, the fact that they're arriving when the team is 3-5-1 with the hardest part of their schedule still looming certainly makes the math of this specific season difficult to take. But what I think the most exciting part about, again, all due respect to Logan Wilson, but the Quinnen Williams acquisition and the Cowboys betting on their first round draft pick and the complication of it relative to the 2027 NFL draft and Green Bay's pick and whatnot. What is particularly exciting is these things all point in the same direction of the Cowboys finally having, I don't want to say a plan, but at least a commitment to something. I've told you all, my biggest criticism of the Cowboys since losing to the Packers in the 2023 wildcard round has been the lack of a North Star, the lack of a singular point of motivation. They have that now. They have a singular point of motivation. They are clearly structuring their roster in a certain way, acquiring Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams, players who still have multiple years of team control. They are establishing a new nucleus, a new core group of players, certainly along the defensive side of the ball, beyond what they have on offense to this point. And that is an exciting thing. It may not work out. They may not win the Super Bowl before the 2027 season is ultimately over. But at the very least, they finally have some semblance of a commitment, some semblance of a plan, some semblance of a North Star. And that is something that they had been lacking as a franchise, as an organization for almost 2 full years at this point in time. And we were kind of sick of it. So good on them for starting to dig out of the hole that, to be very clear, they initially dug themselves and pushed everyone into. On YouTube, D-Day2 says, what's the deal with Diggs now? Is he coming back or done? He's on injured reserve, so we'll have to see about that. But I mean, based on everything we've seen to this point, I would imagine that Trayvon Diggs is definitely done. Linwood D. Doyle says, my name ran together for some reason. It's Linwood Doyle. Sorry about that, Linwood, but thank you very much for correcting me. G says, no help for the secondary, not at the trade deadline. Karam says, the Quinnen deal, I was thinking, what picks did they trade away? Again, let's take a look at this one more time here. The Cowboys, for the Quinnen Williams trade specifically, gave up their 2026 second-round draft pick, which is mitigated by the fact that they still have multiple first-round draft picks in 2026, theirs and Green Bay's, as a result of the Micah Parsons trade. Obviously, that first-round draft pick was just one piece of the Micah trade, but Cowboys have multiple first-round draft picks next year, but do not have their second-round draft pick because they gave it to the Jets for Quinnen Williams. They also gave the Jets Mozzie Smith. They also gave the Jets one of their first-round draft picks in 2027. And we're going to have to say this a lot over the next year and a half, almost 2 years now, that 2027 first-round draft pick that the Jets are going to get from the Dallas Cowboys is going to be the one closer to the top of the order between Dallas's and Green Bay's, because the Cowboys also hold the rights to Green Bay's first-round draft pick in 2027 as a result of the Micah Parsons trade. So it's very possible. In fact, it's hopeful, it's preferable that the Jets use Green Bay's original first-round draft pick in 2027 because the Cowboys have a better 2026 season than Green Bay ultimately does, even with Micah Parsons on their team. That's what the Quinnen Williams acquisition is supposed to work towards. It is very complicated. It is very crazy. It is very fun. It is very interesting. And again, it is at the very least pointing in the direction of the Cowboys finally trying to do something, finally trying to make something about this whole mess that they have made for themselves. D-Day2 says the Cowboys pick next year will be second half of the first unless something goes horribly wrong. Green Bay's too. Yeah, I mean, right now the Cowboys are slated to pick in the top half of the order, and there are still 8 games left. There's a lot to happen, and it goes without saying that we all hope the Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson acquisitions help turn things around and the Cowboys are able to storm into the playoffs and win the Super Bowl, right? Like, that's the most obviously optimistic way that this whole thing can go. But I think in all likelihood, the Cowboys' original first-round draft pick in 2026 is probably going to fall somewhere between 12 and 20, right? Like somewhere around that range. And Green Bay's is probably going to be somewhere around 26 to 28. I mean, maybe even further back. You just don't know at this point in time, obviously. So they're going to have to get creative with those. And the fact that they're not going to have a second-round draft pick because they gave it to the Jets, the fact that they're not going to have a third-round draft pick because they already gave it away to the Steelers previously in the George Pickens trade, they're going to have to land these. I mean, we talk a lot about how the Cowboys have had a lot of success in the first round, and there are a lot of points of evidence and data to corroborate that idea, but they also have had their fair share of misses. In fact, the Cowboys traded away one of their misses to the Jets in the Quinnen Williams deal in sending away Mozzie Smith. There is going to be a critical level of just like ultimate attention on these 2 first-round draft picks that the Cowboys have now, especially after obviously trading for Quinnen Williams. And to be very clear here, I think we all would prefer the Cowboys have Quinnen Williams on their team than their 2026 second-round draft pick, especially because the Cowboys of all teams don't handle second-round draft picks well. They finally did the thing that we joke about and said, you know, let's just trade this pick away because we're going to be really bad with it regardless. So again, I think that the Cowboys did the right thing here, but it increases the magnitude. It increases the necessity of hitting on those multiple first-round draft picks in 2026, because after that, the Cowboys are not going to pick again until the 4th round, and that's not exactly a round that they thrive in either. Let's see here. Steven says 2026 second-round pick is now the Green Bay first. That's a great way of looking at it, obviously, because Green Bay's first-round pick that Dallas owns is going to be so far back in the order, in all likelihood again, and that is effectively the Cowboys' second-round draft pick, although they do carry the 5th-round option, 5th-year option, excuse me. I mean, there are a lot of details to this whole thing, and again, it is all made better by the fact that Quinnen Williams is now a member of the Cowboys. Again, I think we prefer this reality to any other alternative one. Let's see here. Opera Doc says they had a good second-round pick this last draft. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubting that Donovan Ezuraku has certainly helped, and maybe that was the turning of the corner, but I mean, Donovan Ezuraku was the best. I think we, as a society, don't give them enough credit for hitting on Trayvon Diggs. I know that Trayvon's pissed a lot of people off, but that definitely was a hit in the second round. But for the most part, that is a round that they kind of mess around and find out. So thankfully, they won't have that opportunity. Siegfried says, I know it's pessimistic, but I'm not convinced they have chosen a direction to get out of this, as you said. I'll take my crow grilled with salt and pepper if I'm wrong. This is just a flash for headlines as usual. I want to be very clear here. I fully believe the Cowboys trading for Logan Wilson, and specifically Quinnen Williams, was a desperate grasp, a desperate plea for attention ahead of Tuesday's trade deadline. I think that that's pretty obvious to not just people who know the Cowboys well or follow the Cowboys a lot, but anyone who has a brain. It was very, very, very clearly a look at me, Tinkerbell needs applause to live sort of thing. That being said, multiple things can be true. It can be true that it was an attention grab, that it was something to keep them relevant, that it was something to buy excitement for them, especially as they enter their bye week on kind of a dull note, having gotten embarrassed by the Arizona Cardinals. All those things can be true, in addition to it being true that this move really solidifies who they're going to be for the future. And more than that, this kind of forces them to get serious. This forces them to take obviously the rest of 2025, but specifically 2026 seriously, because they have now bet on themselves in a different manner by committing to giving the Jets the better of their multiple first-round draft picks in 2027. They have committed to saying, we're going to be better than Green Bay. We are going to work hard. We are going to do this, because they do not have a second-round draft pick or a third-round draft pick in 2026. They have accelerated. They have put a little bit of things on the credit card, so to speak, like we've asked them to do in many different instances. And so it could be true that this was for attention, but that this also was a little bit of, dare I say, not quite all in, but a little bit of standing up and taking a swing. And I'm super down for this. While I agree that it was an attention move for the Cowboys and from Jerry Jones specifically, it was also something that significantly helps clearly the short term of this team, but more specifically the long term, and gives them a stronger fighting chance and avoids opportunity to get in their own way by way of, just destroying their second-round draft pick next year the way they traditionally have for most of the last decade. Trashy Lobster says, I'm so tired of the whole circus with the Jones family. It's about them, not the team. Yeah, that's kind of what comes to the dinner around here. D-Day 2 says they better take a 2026 and 2027 seriously. Dak's prime isn't going to last much longer. That's probably it, right? I think if you look at the Cowboys now in the aftermath, I feel badly for Logan Wilson because he's kind of an afterthought here, but Quinnen Williams is Quinnen Williams. So the aftermath of the Logan Wilson and specifically Quinnen Williams trades on Tuesday for the Cowboys is that we talk so much about the term windows in sports, but they have very clearly defined a window for themselves now with regards to the 2026 and 2027 seasons. Those are it. That's it. Those two players are under contract through those 2 years. The Cowboys obviously have a primary core nucleus of players in Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and their young offensive linemen who are under contract for the most part through those 2 years. The general overwhelming kind of primary pieces of this roster are going to be on the team through 2026 and 2027. It's after that you have to start to have some serious and different and maybe difficult conversations about different points of the roster. And so this Quinnen Williams move, and again, Logan Wilson as well, it really highlights that. It really makes it obvious. It really makes it unavoidable. And while that sounds treacherous and that sounds scary and that sounds risky and we're all terrified of everything with this team because of Well, it also kind of forces them to get to work. And so in that respect, it makes the next 2 years very, very, very intimidating and very, very, very stressful, but it forces them to understand that. It forces them to reckon with that reality. It forces them to meet that reality head on. And if they fail, so what? We're pretty accustomed to it at this point in time, but they have, again, this expression is very frustrating with regards to this specific team, but they have pushed some chips closer to the middle here. I don't want to say all in, but they've gone a little bit all in relative to 2026 and 2027. And after that, the primary foundation of this team will probably look very different. Let's see here. Linwood Doyle says, Revel needs to start the rest of the year to see what you have. Yeah, I mean, think about it for a second here. 2026 and 2027 is going to be led defensively for the Cowboys. And there's some hope and optimism behind some of these things, right? But DaRon Bland is under contract for the foreseeable future. Quinnen Williams is now under contract for the foreseeable future. Logan Wilson is under contract for the foreseeable future. You've got DeMarvion Overshown. You've got Savon Ravel, hopefully. There's theoretically going to be some safety help that you bring in there. You've got some pieces. And I don't mean to upset everyone, but there's an argument for keeping Matt Eberflus because of the fact that there's been so much turnover and you don't want to do it again. And there's clearly an argument against keeping him. I recognize that I'm just having a discussion out loud with my friends on the internet here, but you have the pieces of a nucleus now. You have the pieces of a core group. You have the pieces of a general collection that is going to ride this thing out for the next 2.5, maybe 3 seasons if you're lucky altogether. And one of the most important things that they can have is continuity. And so you want to have that. You have to establish that. You very, 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 very much are in sore need of that. And so that makes the conversation interesting. If you do want to move on from Matt Eberflus, okay, whatever. Again, there's more than enough reason to justify doing so. But that makes whoever you hire as your future hypothetical defensive coordinator the most important decision you're going to make in the offseason, because you've already established the primary pieces of the roster. You already have a head coach in place, but that person that, again, would be defensive coordinator if it's not Matt Eberflus, that's the person who's going to take over this nucleus that you just put the final pieces and touches on by trading for Quinnen Williams. I know that you all are saying that, it would be horrible to keep Matt Eberflus, and I get that. I'm not necessarily arguing for keeping him. I'm just arguing the merits of it. I'm not necessarily saying that I share them. Jonathan says, you said you had thoughts on our safety room as well, RJ. My thoughts are I know that Quinnen Williams is kind of the final piece. He's the final main piece. They're very clearly going to have to do something at safety. And that might be what they do with one of their first round draft picks. You could argue that they have to do that because they don't have a second or third round pick. I mean, the day one of the draft is going to be a lot of fun next year, but day two is going to be horrible, right? Like day two is going to be miserable as we sit and watch each and every single team pick. And we're going to be tempted to say the Cowboys should trade back up, but they're going to have to find help, or they're going to have to spin in free agency. And I know that a lot of people wanted Mika Fitzpatrick, but they didn't do that. They didn't go down that route. They're already down their second and third round picks in 2026. So I can understand why they held firm, but they have really, put a neon sign around the fact that they need help at safety. There's just no way that they can go at this in 2026 with players who are currently on the roster or some low-level free agents. They have to do something serious to match the level of investment that they've made now with Quinnen Williams, with Osa Digizua, with DaRon Bland, obviously at corner, and obviously with everything they've done on offense. KJ says, I kind of agree. The defense can only get better. Continuity is very, very important. Again, I'm not going to sit here and advocate for the work that Matt Eberflus has done so far this season, but I think that is something, it's a conversation worth having out loud at the very least. Again, in the aftermath of the Quinnen Williams acquisition, it's that important of a thing. Caleb Downs is what Ryan says. Yeah, I mean, let's go. I've got zero issues, zero qualms with that. Cool. Not seeing anything else. Just making sure nothing crazy happened. No quotes or anything like that. I think Tuesday was a step forward for the Dallas Cowboys. I think that when you consider the totality of everything that has happened since the team traded away Micah Parsons, I'm in no way saying that I believe this, but you could maybe believe that they have learned their lesson a little bit, that they have learned that playing stupid games earned them some stupid prizes, that they dug a serious hole that they dragged everyone into with them, and that they have to kind of get out of it at this point in time. Maybe they won't ever get out of it, but I would offer that the moves they've made, and not just the Quinnen Williams trade, but the extensions for DaRon Bland and Jake Ferguson and Tyler Smith that happened immediately after the Micah trade, you could argue, I'm not, but you could argue that they have learned their lesson, so to speak. and they have made a very clear commitment by way of resources and a lack of resources in terms of draft capital that was traded on Tuesday. They have made a commitment to taking things very seriously in 2026 and 2027. That's an exciting thing. And so from that perspective, I have said forever that I want this team to have a singular North Star. They have established it. They may not have packed up their bag and folded up the tent and started hiking towards it yet, but at the very least, they have looked at their map and they have said, that's the North Star. We're going to head that direction. And so in that respect, this was a significant step forward for the franchise from an overall 30,000 foot perspective. Now, to be very clear here, these things that we're commending the Cowboys for and saying, oh, wow, this is super impressive, you're doing X, Y, and Z, these are bare bones, bare minimum things that should be expected, again, at a bare minimum level from not just NFL franchise, but sports franchise who understands the goal is to win games and stack wins and win championships. So we're giving the Cowboys some pats on the back for just doing basic things that signify general levels of competence. But they have been so far beneath that bar for so long that right now it feels like we're tasting the sweetest air possible. And we're not even quite at the air level. We're just kind of close at the top and we can see it. We're getting close. We're no longer down to the depths of the ocean. And so they took a step forward, a significant step forward on Tuesday, and maybe it saves their 2025 season. I think that that's doubtful. I think we all think that that's doubtful, but at the very least, they helped themselves in 2026 and 2027, and they deserve some legitimate kudos for that. Karam says the front office can do the right things, but they can do, or I don't know if you're saying they can't do this consistently. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible that they turn a leaf, but I agree with you. KJ says the next thing is re-signing Pickens because that gives you the ability to draft a safety without having to worry about spending one of those first on a wide receiver. Plus, if Pickens walks, you wasted a third. Johnny Boy also says they need to sign Pickens right now. Look, the Cowboys did not fix everything by trading for Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams on Tuesday, but they helped, right? They made this team better. They made the future of this team brighter. And if you want to continue to earn back some of our trust, it's going to take a long time before you have all of it. Let's be very clear here. If you get the George Pickens deal done, you are now, because you're past the trade deadline, clearly not trading him away. So you're committed to this, right? That's an important reality of the trade deadline having officially passed at this point in time. So you want us to believe that you're taking this seriously. You want us to believe that you care more about your television ratings and your oil businesses and your guest appearances on Landman, right? You want us to believe that, then get a George Pickens extension done ASAP. And if you don't get it done this season, we understand things can get a little bit hectic with a football season happening. Get them done in the offseason. Get him done. Get him taken care of as soon as the offseason hits. Do not let this go down to the wire. Do not place the franchise tag on him. Do not call it a placeholder. Do not let it get to the July 15th deadline where you have to make a thing more complicated than it could or should have been or could or should have not been, to be very clear here. If you get the George Pickens extension done in a normal, competent, adult, mature manner, then we will give you some of our trust back. You have a long way to go to get the whole thing back, as we noted, to be very, very, very clear here. But that is absolutely one of the top level priorities for the Dallas Cowboys following all their activity on Tuesday ahead of the trade deadline. Linwood Doyle says, unpopular view, but I think we won the Micah trade. We now have 3 really good defensive tackles, and Williams is a monster at stopping the run. Clowney and Ezuraku are starting to show up. I'm not going to go that far. I think that the Cowboys have made some lemonade as a result of the Micah trade, but I think that the Micah trade was a result of them playing stupid games. They played a stupid game. They won a stupid prize, and cool. They have kind of started to make it a little bit better as a result. I don't think that we can ever truly, I know people like to say, you know, we need to see how the picks turn out and all this different stuff. I don't think we'll ever be able to say. And the reality is, you could argue this thing a number of different directions and say the Cowboys costed themselves by way of their reputation because, again, I don't want to get into these weeds, but you could argue that Quinnen Williams is now really pumped to be a Cowboy, right? Because Quinnen Williams is saying, oh, awesome, you know, I'm going to want a new deal pretty soon. And I know because of the way the Cowboys handle things, look at Micah, look at Dak, look at CD, but look at Micah specifically. And if I don't get my big deal, the deal I want, the extension I want from them, I'll get it from someone else. So you could argue that they have costed themselves a significant financial loss relative to their salary cap because of the stupid games that they've played. Making sure I don't see anything else. Cool. I think that, by the way, Opera Doc, since you're asking the Joneses to act in a way they haven't in 30 years, I don't know. And Opera Doc says, what is their obsession with comp picks? I think the Cowboys are obsessed with comp picks for the same reason that people love to say that the Packers like to draft, right? Like the narrative surrounding the Green Bay Packers for forever has been they don't believe in free agency, they believe in building through the NFL draft. I don't mean to suggest that I don't believe that to be true, but I don't believe that to be true. I believe that to be the narrative, and I believe that to be the Packers' party line because the Packers can't succeed in free agency. And I've been to Green Bay. It's awesome. It's pro football's holiest cathedral, and it's a must for every NFL, football, sports, life fan. It is just one of the most beautiful, special places on earth. But it's not a secret that it's not exactly a destination to go to if you're an NFL free agent that has access to all of the destinations that NFL cities have to offer. And so I believe that the Packers have contorted this situation and worked it to their advantage over their history and suggested, hey, no, we don't care about free agency. It's not that nobody will come here. No, please don't believe that. It's that we don't care about free agency. And so the Cowboys have, in a similar way, they obviously have the advantages of where they are locale and they're a destination for players in a way that Green Bay isn't. But the Cowboys have said, oh, we like comp picks and we like drafting. We don't believe in free agency. The reason they like that is because that's the only thing they can't avoid. They can choose to not be active in free agency. They can consciously make that decision. But guess what? When you have draft picks and you're forced to make those decisions, you're forced to make those picks and selections. Well, you have to, right? Like it's unavoidable. Free agency is avoidable for the Dallas Cowboys, but comp picks, draft selections, those things are not. That's why they believe in them, because they're the least avoidable things that the Cowboys can do. They're the only piece of work that they have to get up for, which is why they like them more than other points. Opera Doc says they signed Josh Jacobs. That's true. I mean, look, you can find examples of free agents that the Packers signed, but historically speaking, they're not a team or a place that acquires a lot of players by way of free agency. There are definitely exceptions, obviously. And I agree. This is my point that KJ says they're playing the narrative to make themselves look better. Exactly. The Packers play to the narrative that they don't like free agency because it sounds better than that nobody wants to go there. The same way the Cowboys like to play to the narrative that they believe in drafting players and comp picks because it sounds better than saying we just don't want to do the work that free agency requires the way other teams will. Except that I've been doing for a few weeks now in these videos the day after the Dallas Cowboys play a game is offering my classic Cowboy moment of the week. Shout out to my friends at Classic Cowboy. I love these hats. Dak Prescott wears them. I've got a billion of them, all sorts of colors. They have amazing options. If you love the Cowboys, they make sense. If you love good hats, good products, they obviously make sense. But my classic Cowboy moment of the week is a bit of a curveball this week. It's not about the Cowboys' loss to the Arizona Cardinals specifically, but my classic Cowboy moment of the week was everything about Tuesday's deadline with a mandatory and obligatory LOL, because Tuesday was the most classic Cowboy thing of all time, right? We woke up and immediately had a Dallas Cowboys trade in our Twitter feeds. And then as the day went on, we were thinking there's no way they're actually going to pull something big off. Hello, Quinnen Williams. So everything about Tuesday's NFL trade deadline was classic Dallas Cowboys, and that's why it's my classic Cowboy moment of the week. Sometimes things truly, really, and actually, and amazingly are that poetic and perfect. So shout out to Classic Cowboys, shout out to the Cowboys themselves, and of course, shout out to Quinnen Williams. I think that Tuesday was a good day. In a general sense, it would be a lot more fun if the Cowboys had won. If they were 4-4-1, I think we would be coping ourselves into saying they have a shot. They can do this. And again, they technically have a shot. They technically could pull this off. They could win out, right? Like we can come up with a million hypotheticals. I know that so many people roll their eyes at that. I'm just telling you what is technically possible in a world of infinite possibilities. So the fact that they lost, I do think kind of hinders or puts a damper on our ability to get fully and totally excited. Maybe that dissipates as the bye week kind of passes and we get ready for their next appearance on Monday Night Football. But you can bet your bottom dollar, no pun intended, when this team returns from the bye and makes their first ever regular season trip to Las Vegas to play the Raiders, that we're going to get just inundated with all-in puns and how the Cowboys have made a bet and all sorts of Vegas and Sin City jargon because of them pushing the chips towards the center of the table. We're going to get some sort of ESPN graphic. I can see it now with Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams as the chips and Jerry Jones betting and whatnot and all these silly sorts of things. But They're 3-5-1. They've overcome a 3-5 record to make the playoffs before. That did happen in 2018, following a trade that involved a first-round draft pick for them. That was the Amari Cooper deal. Obviously, it should be noted they were 3-4 when they acquired Amari and lost their first game with him, which was also on Monday Night Football. That was Jason Witten's return. Incidentally, Jason Witten would go on to play for the Las Vegas Raiders, but it's possible. I don't know that I would say it's doable. And while it's technically exciting that it is possible, the most exciting thing, and I know this isn't what a lot of people want to hear, the most exciting thing about the Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams trades is that 2026 and 2027, multiple years in the Dallas Cowboys future, carry hope, promise, and excitement. And it's been a long time since we've had an ability to be excited about any kind of future with the Cowboys. And so maybe they pull it off this year, but if they don't, they have a chance to pull it off in 2026 and 2027. And that is what matters the most. Let's see here. Johnny Boy says, hypotheticals lead to heartbreak. That being said, God save me if they win 3 in a row. That would be wild, given that their next 3 games are the Raiders, which is certainly winnable, the Eagles, which would, again, if they were to just win those 2 to get back to 500, think about, like, to use Johnny Boy's point here, if the Cowboys won their next 3, that would be the Raiders on Monday Night Football, the Eagles on Sunday afternoon kick. That's the Sunday before Thanksgiving. Just would be massive game, and they would be 5-5-1 at that point in time. And then that 3rd game in a row would be Thanksgiving Day against the Kansas City Chiefs. If they beat the Chiefs to get 3 in a row and get north of 500 to establish a 3-game winning streak, God help us all. I mean, we would just kind of lose it in the best possible way. So hopefully it happens. Hopefully we're forced to kind of have that tough conversation with ourselves. But I enjoy having all kinds of conversations with all of you. I do it here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel each and every single day. So please subscribe. You can also hang out with me on social media, X, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, RJ.Ochoa. Email is rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. You can go like my Facebook page. The links to all these things are down in the description below. I'll be back on Wednesday with a live edition of the NFC East mixtape between myself and Brandon Lee Gowton. Obviously, a lot to discuss within the NFL's most storied division, which is the NFC East, and whether or not we think the Cowboys have a chance of giving it a run, or if the Eagles are going to be the first team to repeat as division champions in a very, very long time. That will air starting at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. For now, my friends, I bid you all adieu. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and congratulations to each and every single one of us, because Quinnen Williams now plays for our favorite football team. Hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday, and thanks for hanging out. See you next time.